Right, welcome everybody to the International Conference on Consciousness-Based Leadership and Management, organized by Maharishi International University and co-sponsored by Academy of Management's MSR division. We welcome you all, and we are on day 3 of a 3-day conference. We are on the 3rd session of the day, and this is a wonderful workshop, and we will have described. It's changed in many ways, so I'll just hand over to the main coordinator for this session, Ms. Giorgia Nigri. She will describe what panelists for the process is. It's going to be a very fluid, beautiful workshop. Giorgia, please take it away.
Yeah, we actually work as a team, so we're each one is going to introduce part of it. So Tom, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Giorgia. Welcome to our session on a loving inquiry, everybody. I'm Tom Culham, lecturer at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Canada. I'm an engineer and former business executive. I left that world to complete a PhD in philosophy of education in 2012. My research and teaching focuses on the application of contemplative practices in business ethics education. Why are we doing this? Neuroscientists, psychologists, educators, and management scholars propose that the current emphasis on the intellect and reason in education and business over values such as love, connectedness, and compassion are at the root of many business ethical failures and societal problems. They argue not that reason should be abandoned, but rather that it needs to be balanced with values such as love, because these attributes are innately human, and love enables wise decision-making. The aim of our session today and our research is to explore the experience of cultivating love within a community of academic management educators by evoking a loving inquiry. Our research approach is to use collaborative autoethnography to gather evidence to describe an effective process that facilitates the emergence of embodied love within a group setting. Today, we're going to demonstrate our approach so you can witness and learn from the loving inquiry we're about to engage in. Just a little backstory on our work. We found one another following last year's research collaborative held by Management, Spirituality, and Religion Special Interest Group of the Academy of Management's annual conference. The people you see before you are panelists, Angela, Richard, Barbara, and Giorgia connected with each other. And since then, we have met a number of times to practice loving inquiry as a community. So let me introduce our members, and then I'll turn it over to Angela and Barbara to take us further. First, I want to introduce Angela. She's a 2020 Fetzer Scholar. She's starting her 3rd year PhD in management at the University of Melbourne in Australia. She worked in human resources in the US, oil and auto industries for 17 years. Now she's studying compassion and suffering in businesses for her dissertation. Dr. Giorgia Nigri, also 2020 Fetzer Scholar of Lumsa University, Italy. She has a PhD in civil economy and works as a researcher and practitioner in the field of sustainability and coordinates the work in Care Village for the economy of Francesco. Barbara Nussbaum is an independent researcher and author located in Stellenbosch, South Africa. She's a trained creative therapist who created a social flourishing practice called Finding Us in Music. She's an advocate of African wisdom and Ubuntu. She integrates an orientation towards our common humanity in her work. And she has practiced TM for over 25 years. Dr. Richard Peregoy is an associate professor at the Gupta College of Business at the University of Dallas and began his career as an industrial engineer, shifting to senior roles in human resources. Later, he entered academia where his research interests are MSR, Management, Spirituality, and Religion, and its practical application in management. Before I turn it over to Angela, who's going to provide more information on collaborative autoethnography, and Barbara, who will provide a guideline for today's work on embodying loving inquiry, I wish to leave you with two quotes from yesterday's first session on consciousness-based management education to set the tone for our work today. I don't know if I got the pronunciation correct, but Trilochan Sastry, a panelist, quoted Sarah Priestley, non-duality as follows, open quotes. My only gift to the world is to know myself, to know that stillness does not demand the absence of chaos, and to act from there. And Anil Gupta, also a panelist, said, we don't need chaos to end to know stillness. We don't need the cacophony to quieten to know silence. We don't need the appearance of separation to end to know love. Our little group has been inquiring into love in the presence of chaos and separation in the world and in our lives. We hope you join our inquiry today in this spirit. And my apologies if I attributed the quotes incorrectly. I was picking it up really quickly yesterday. So over to you, Angela.
Thanks, Tom. So a little bit about the Collaborative Autoethnography, or CAE. It's a qualitative research method, and CAE is a variation of autoethnography in which the researcher utilizes his or her autobiographical data as a window into the understanding of social phenomena. So part of it is autobiographical because the researcher collects information about their personal experiences, and it's ethnographic because they also take that personal experience and other social cultural experiences to analyze and interpret their lived experience. So what's happening is that there's an interweaving of self-reflexivity with group exploration. And so each participant contributes to the collective work through their distinctive independent voice. And at the same time, the combination of the multiple voices in exploring the social phenomena creates a unique synergy and harmony that one person cannot just do it in isolation. So it's reflective of relational ontology. So what's happening is that the researchers explore the self in the presence of others, and the CAE enables scholars to gain a collective understanding of their shared experiences. So we as a team were inspired by the CAE in this process to create a shared experience to understand love. And so by evoking a loving inquiry, we ask an individual to share a story about what love means to them. So it enhances the group's understanding of what love means, not just to that individual, but also to each of the group members. So this holistic understanding of love forms a foundation for the group members to better facilitate love within the group. So in terms of what to expect today in this session, we will do a demonstration for you. Giorgia will share her experience, her story of love. And then our team will take.
Angela, can I interrupt you for a moment? Sorry, I forgot to do the reflection exercise before.
Okay.
But before you go too deep into it, can I say before you begin to talk about the story, etc.? I think we got the process.
Just after Angela finishes her thing, then we can do that, and then we'll go to Barbara.
We can do it right before we get started, like we always do. Actually, it'll be more. It's Providence that made you forget.
Wonderful. Thank you. I just wanted to. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so in terms of the process, so after Giorgia shares her story, and then our team will take about 15 minutes to start the love inquiry by asking questions. And then we also have some volunteer participants who we invite you to also follow our lead and start asking questions when you feel comfortable. And if you can really briefly just introduce yourselves to the audience, just your name would be helpful.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia Stolberg-Walker from George Washington University.
Can we do that as we go to the process right now, since you described the process? Let's do the meditation. The sooner we do, better. Everybody has settled energy.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So thank you. We are doing this session number 13 as I described, and we are coming from various places around the world and with different energies. So let's just settle down as we get into the loving inquiry. So please mute yourself, turn your video off sit back, relax, and close your eyes, and I'll tell you when the 5 minutes are up. Thank you. Use any technique, any practice that you normally do to connect with the self. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anil. So just to finish up the expectation of what's going to happen, before I have the volunteer participants introduce themselves, after we do the love inquiry, then Richard's going to facilitate a brief discussion and ask the participants to share their experiences, their thoughts. And Barbara will help wrap up the session by tying our PDW to the purpose of this conference and human flourishing. So we welcome the audience members to put comments, observations in the chat so you can participate. Given if you have any observations or experiences, we'd like to hear or see that as well. And so with the volunteer participants, if you can just, once again, just briefly introduce yourselves, we'd appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christian List. I'm a second-year doctoral student at the George Washington University Executive Leadership Program, cohort 32. I am in partnership with Julia and Hermela, Ella in this group, and we've been working on a collaborative autoethnography for the past few months.
Great, thank you. Excited to have you.
Hi everyone, this is Hermela Teke. I'm also a second-year doctoral student at the George Washington University. Basically what Christian just said applies to me as well. I'm actually going to turn it over to Dr. Julia if she wants to introduce herself. I think you might have been cut out earlier.
No, that's loving. Thank you, Ella. And yes, again, I'm Julia Stolberg-Walker, Associate Professor at George Washington University. I've had the privilege of working with Christian, Ella, and Mike Yo, who isn't here today because he got married yesterday. So he's having a loving experience himself. So the four of us have been on a CAE journey since January. So we're really delighted to be invited to participate with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Do you have anybody? Go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, my name is Natalia Fernandez. I'm the student volunteer for this organization. I'm an MBA and MA student at the Maharishi International University and Sustainable Business and Leadership and Workplace Conflict Resolution. And I'm here because of Anil's invite. So thank you, Anil.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Is there anybody else? Is that it?
Are you inviting us also to introduce ourselves, or?
If you want to participate, yeah, you're welcome to. Otherwise,
Aren't Dennis and I and Chris also going to participate, or we just observers, or?
You're welcome to participate. All
Okay.
this is that we're just going to ask people, if you have any questions you want to ask after our team starts the first round, then you're welcome to join us.
Okay, all right. Maybe why don't you can complete the first round? We could join later. So that's
okay,
good.
that sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so for everybody, Barbara is now going to explain the expectations and the norms of how to listen from a deep loving space, so she can set us up for this love inquiry.
Thank you, Angela. So to evoke a loving inquiry to support collaborative autoethnographic inquiry process, we believe we can co-create the conditions for people to bring a caring, shared intention into the social field. So we're suggesting some orientation for listening to help us build the invisible architecture for a loving virtual space. The more we can show up for each other with a full heart as well as a clear mind, the more we can shape the conditions for a receptive and productive collaborative inquiry. So to embody how we can listen from a deep and heartfelt place, we suggest the following guidelines, and I'll put them in the chat after I finish talking. We invite you to listen without judgment for the person. Listen with heartfelt openness to the story that Giorgia will be sharing. Listen with profound respect and listen with deep reverence for the person. We invite you to listen with an open and flexible mind and listen with the intention to understand the person's journey with love. Listen for what the person offering the story is seeking to communicate, and then in a humble way, offer what insights and questions you have that enable the group to understand the person more. Listen with your own awareness, intuition, creativity to offer feedback about what the story might be telling you about Giorgia's journey. So when you speak to Giorgia, we invite you to speak from your heart. And when you talk to her in the I-thou mode. So don't talk to her in the third person. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Giorgia, to tell your story.
Yes, thank you. And I'm actually really happy you all are participating, because I saw the video Julia sent and I saw how much fun you guys were having. And that's the exact same thing, because the special thing about this is that you create a safe space. Like, it's our birthday now, right? Because we met for Academy of Management last year. And, you know, every time we meet, it's like that milestone in our month or weeks or whatever, and it makes everything a lot more fun. And you always know that you have that safe space, even when you're not sharing a story, because even witnessing is very important. So we just hope you can just pitch into our energy. So the disclaimer for me is I'm not somebody who generally shares emotions. So we all decided that I was going to do it and that I was going to be okay with it, because just to show that it was open to everyone, that it's something that everyone can do. And I'm actually happy Natalia's here as well, because the story I'm going to share today is toxic workplaces and how to find love when you have even like a toxic environment where you don't have love there in the beginning. So I need to do a little premise so that you know a little bit about where I come from and why this story ended up as it is. So my father was a doctor, and he believed everybody should have access to public health care. So he really fought, like, institutionally, politically, personally, to obtain this. Well, so much so that since this is not like The Resident or like some TV show, the conflicts actually were very high with his chief medical officer, with the board of trustees, you know, with everybody, because even with his colleagues, because he would always take in all the patients and all the issues that nobody really wanted to deal with. So what happened is the conflict and the toxicity and the stress added to the fact that they would never make him do the patient labs, because he would take in all the kind of the lepers, you know, all the people that nobody wanted to deal with, got so bad that his boss would always make him do like the x-ray shifts double. Well, so ends up he got together with the stress and he got exposed so much to radiation that he ended up contracting leukemia and he died. So that happened when I was around 12 years old. So as I always kid with the group, I really wanted to be a go-go dancer when I was a teenager. So then I ended up actually finishing school, like getting 2 degrees, a master's, a PhD, but I got my PhD later. But I mean, I started actually studying and working for 10 plus years until I landed the job I have right now, which was a really, really good job. So, you know, like I started in this job and I was kind of like 30 years old at this point, you know, like I had done my experiences, my precariousness, you know, like I had been abroad, you know, done a lot of things. And so I finally landed this really good job. So I begin this job and, you know, I build a relationship with my boss and everything. And I ask him if I can do my PhD. So, you know, we have a trust relationship and he says, yes, go ahead. If that's what you want to do and you feel like you have the bandwidth to do it, go ahead. So this is like, I'm in a really good space, right? Corporate, like I like my research, my social life is in the company, like I like my colleagues, I get a lot of support, I have an intern. And so, you know, we're building this new area together, like this new division. So everything's fine. And at one point, like once I'm like halfway through my 3rd year, the company gets bought out. Okay, so like 100% bought out. So then the management, like they totally cancel the old management out and they bring new management in. Queenie, this happens in like a month, okay? And so I get this like Cinderella story where suddenly I have like a step boss, like evil colleague, like literally, like I get demoted like moved out of my office. And it's actually really funny because we have, you know, so you have Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, right? And the Seven Dwarfs are actually hand painted in Italy. Okay, so we have one that represents our company because it's like, you know, the small and medium enterprises that do these kind of things. So instead of having like, you know, like one of those boxes with like papers inside, I have this like stupid dwarf, no, that I'm like, okay, so what are we gonna do now? And then what happens is mobbing starts. And I'm gonna explain what mobbing is because since I'm in Italy, Barbara thought it was the mafia, for example, but no, it wasn't that. Mobbing can be either vertical or horizontal. So vertical, it's like your boss does it to you, and horizontal is like your colleagues do it to you. And it's basically like workplace bullying. So suddenly like you're not CC'd on emails, like no one talks to you, you don't get calls, or like, for example, take Anil, like he planned the whole conference, suddenly they're like, who's Anil? Like he never, like, you know, he sent emails and stuff and everybody acts like he never did this, like you were never there. So that was crazy. And it got so bad that at one point people were like scared to be seen with me, you know? It's like a virus. They're like, what if that happens to me too, just because I'm hanging out with her? What if they do it to me? And so at one point, like, it was my birthday. Like I'm always one of those people who makes a big deal about her birthday in particular, but also in Italy, it's very typical that like you buy cornetti and like you buy everyone coffee when it's your birthday, you know, show up in the office. I guess people do that all the time. Well, I mean, I didn't do that year, obviously, but people knew when it was my birthday. So this lady, since she wanted to be nice, but she didn't want to be seen like in the open space or in the corridor or whatever, she like followed me to the bathroom to give me my birthday present. And this is like a person who was like, I don't know, like 56, not like someone younger. So I was like, wait, you're that scared? Like, that's so weird. And like, I'm standing in the bathroom, like with my birthday, which is actually really sweet and like really picked out for me, but it was just so awkward. So at that point I resonated like, okay, this needs to stop, right? This needs to stop with me. Like this doesn't work, because I didn't think it was so bad and so vast, basically. So what I did is, you know, I started reaching out for help. I started reaching out for advice because, you know, I'm a researcher at this point, right? I'm doing my PhD and I'm looking at numbers, and numbers are crazy. And, you know, it's happening to a lot of people around the world. And everybody I go to is kind of like, Babette, just leave. You can do so much better. You have your PhD, go do something else in your life, you know, I mean, obviously. And I'm like, okay, no, that's not what I want. So I work in like, this is like an insurance / banking kind of place. So, you know, we're always dressed up like heels, bags, but we're in Italy, so everyone always has sunglasses, no? So I just kind of get out of my office and I go sit in front of my professor's office. Like I go to university and like he has these little stairs. So I'm just sitting there and, you know, like I'm waiting for him. And when I come there, you know, they're like, what happened to you? And I was like, okay, you guys, you know, like I thought that I was going to end my PhD, you know, my career was going to get better. You know, this was not what I was expecting. And literally, so it's two of my professors, one's sitting on like in a corner eating pizza, and the other one's like fixing his books, right? So I work for like a semi-public company. So he turns it like he has his book in his hand. He turns around and he goes, yeah, the parasites of the state, you know? He's like, why do you care? Like, that doesn't define your worth, no? And then, you know, it's very Italian. He was like, you want to do something? I'll give you something to do. You know, what's your problem? And that's when it struck me. I was like, of course, like, duh, like my work is not my identity. Like, why am I even worried in the first place? Why did I even get started in this journey? So, you know, I go home and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a war. Like, that's it. This is going to be a war. This is going to be like a Gandhi, Mother Teresa kind of war. You know, my boyfriend, he's my husband now, but my boyfriend at the time is like, are you sure? Like, is that what you're going to do? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's my vocation. I decided, let's do it. So actually, it's this really weird phase started because he would drive me to work every day because like I'd get threatened and stuff. Like that's how bad it was. So he was worried that something was actually going to happen to me. And like, you know, my friends or like my mom, they started showing up for lunch, you know, so I didn't have to be alone. And then I started looking for all the people in the company that had other problems like that, you know. I kind of went up to them and was like, you know, can I sit with you? Or like, do you want to be my friend or whatever? And so completely shifted. Like I was out of the corporate like mechanism. And suddenly I was just fine. Like I was so much better. I was having a really good time. I really liked my work. I really liked the people that I was actually hanging out with because they were really my friends, you know, at that point. And what happened is management at this point started to look stupid. My other colleagues started to be overworked because obviously, I mean, I wasn't doing my job, so somebody else had to do my job. And the conflict began to grow between them. So my step colleagues started to get sick. So basically, when pandemic hit, so this is like now, it's recent, they were basically left with just me. So I was the only person that could help them because God has a sense of humor like that, or karma, or whatever you want to believe in. So, you know, they reach out to me and they also have to be like, Giorgia, sorry, would you like to do this? You know, like we need your help. And because, you know, I'm now that everybody ends up without a desk, everyone ends up working remotely, everyone ends up not knowing what their projects are. And, you know, literally for a split second, I was just like, you know, I'm just going to crush them because I can. Like I can, because I had it all, like I had the, you know, the general picture, and they were struggling. So, you know, I was like, but maybe, you know, this is like my moment. But then I figured that in order to create a precedent that was going to be positive, I wasn't going to do that. So, you know, I actually was like, okay, let me try something different, because let's break this vicious circle, right? So then, you know, like I helped, trained in the new resources, you know, made sure people didn't lose their stuff. Because, you know, when they kind of emptied out all the offices and like, you know, disinfected everything, you know, it's hard for people to separate from their seat and their stuff and their role and everything and their team. So this was actually a really good, you know, it helped a lot of people, you know, it created that situation where it was positive. And you know, other people now, when they're in that situation, they can always be like, I remember, no, but that happened and she's fine. And actually, you know, everything went back to normal. Now, the only problem with this, though, is that the price in these things is always too high, because ends up that my step colleague didn't make it. She actually ended up passing away in December. So, you know, I'm still there in the office, trying to fix everybody's stuff, you know, and I'm like, okay, what can I do? And then I'm thinking maybe I can, you know, like because, you know, companies tend to just kind of like throw out your stuff or just put it away or hire somebody else. I mean, let's face it, because the people that even sometimes work in HR in big companies don't even know you directly. Maybe your team does. So, you know, so I was like, let me schedule like a meeting with my boss and her family, you know, like, you know, when I went through her stuff, just little cute things that are always important, you know, for who stays, because really when somebody passes away, it's more hurtful for the people that remain, no, not for the people that leave because they just left. And so, you know, just cute notes about like, you know, like call Pee-Pee, that's how she used to call her husband, or, you know, things like that. We sit like the intern that I had that I was training, like she set up a charity in her name. And then like later I found out recently that she was actually a lot nicer to all the new resources that had come in. So, you know, maybe, you know, she had changed through this experience as well, even though I feel like the price in general was too high. And then my boss, on the other hand, surprised me recently because he's actually starting to send out like loving kindness emails, you know, like he's changing that mindset. He realized from the pandemic that whole like being strong and being that boss where like your command and control doesn't work now that everybody was separated, and that, you know, they weren't scared of him anymore. So he had to find another way to get the team to be engaged. So that's actually funny because it's kind of like my circle closed. And as soon as my circle closed, they've actually offered me a new job now, where they kind of need that same thing, where there's like a conflict and like they're trying to fix it. And, you know, they need the Mary Poppins kind of situation. So I just thought that was a way where it's, once you finally close it and it's kind of like your job there is done, you know, even now if everything's fine and like our work situation is actually very calm. And now I'm actually debating if I really do want to leave that place, you know, or not. So that's the story.
Georgia, I'm curious, like, how did you feel when you saw that shift in your boss, where you started to send out those loving kindness emails?
I just thought, well, I mean, I didn't really have a relationship. Like we have one now, but it's still professional. I mean, at least from my point of view, which it was before as well. Like I never had really a problem with him. I just didn't really care. I just think though that an email from him makes a huge difference because we have like an 80+ person team. And so since they had gotten upset about, we had a staff meeting where, you know, not everybody felt included. So I wrote an email saying, you know, when you don't do that, when you don't feel included or you feel like something's wrong, I'm like, try to make a difference, fix it, you know, like you can reach out to your colleagues, say, you know, like, I'm sorry, I should have left you the word, or, you know, kind of like even what Ella did just before, you know, because you notice things when they happen. And so he actually sent out an email to everyone saying how proud he was, how much everybody had worked. So, I mean, I think it made a difference for the team. For me, like, I was just like, ah, bene, smile on my face.
Georgia, I wonder if you could, you talked about your dad and you know, the kind of things that he did, and I'm assuming you loved your dad. So I'm just wondering how your relationship with your dad and the experiences he had, you know, formed the background for what you did.
I don't know. I mean, I think my whole family is a bit like that as well. Like, I know my grandparent, like my mother's father was a partisan in World War II. Like my grandmother, like the mother of my father, like she used to go and teach like all the in the rural areas to make sure everybody knew how to read and write. So like we've kind of always had this heritage for sure. I think that the story with my father was that when you play these games, you always need to kind of step back. In order to see the greater picture, you need to get out of the conflict. Well, I think he was too active in it. Now, the problem so that was more kind of like my heritage. That's what made me more resilient. Like what didn't make me step back. The only problem is that in these vicious circles, then somebody always gets hurt. Capito? So I was able to step back and to fix things, però comunque someone paid the price anyway. It could have been even better, I feel.
Yeah, always you can see that. I'm wondering, you mentioned that you were going to be a go-go dancer. and I mean, it's quite a shift from a go-go dancer to an academic, right? And the extent that you, so I'm curious about that shift and perhaps maybe you can penetrate a little bit the love you had for your dad that might have informed that. I don't know. I'm just asking.
So my parents were both doctors, no? So like my mom's a surgeon, like she was super like politically also involved, like they were very similar like that. And she has this very classic house. I think there's a picture up on LinkedIn from like my wedding or something. So she had like, it was all mirrors and she had this like marble, like living room or something. And I always used to just get on top there and dance. That's what I used to do. And also I was one of those kids from like 80s, 90s. So like, I remember that as like our stuff you could buy, like I had fake cigarettes, you know? So like that was my thing, you know, like, so I just really wanted to do that. I don't know why. So it was just funny. And every time, you know, somebody, you know, my parents are both doctors. So every time somebody would be like, child, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? You want to be a doctor? I was always like, no, I want to be a go-go dancer, always. And so my father used to say, va bene, so does that mean that you're not going to study? And, you know, and I was like, I don't know if I become famous as a that wasn't my thought or anything. And so he always used to say that if I didn't study, he was going to buy me the gas pump right under our house so that I was going to have a future either way, even if I didn't study, and that I could wake up at 5 a.m. and he could watch me from the window and still be really proud. And it's funny because we used to go dance, at least in Italy, you know, we used to go dance in the afternoon when we were kids. Like you could go dance to like the club from like 4 to like 7. So I don't know what kind of go-go dancer I wanted to be in the afternoon, but comunque it was fun.
Georgia, I wanted to go ahead, Richard.
Thank you, Barbara. Georgia, there's a spirit running through your entire story, and it reminds me of the warrior, of a person who sees what is right, and with all obstacles there, they're going to right what is wrong. To what is this a correct interpretation? Do you feel that you're there to do something which is really a benefit to all? That you're going to help the oppressed?
Right, I feel that's what I did, but it was too much art of war, no? So then you know how to play that game and you win. But I think that if we have to use the warrior as a metaphor, then it has to be more similar to the yoga warrior, you know, as opposed to the warrior that fights for some right. Because I've had this conversation with you guys before, not with everyone, but sometimes when you have this like Che Guevara drive, no? If you ever speak to Che Guevara's family, they are not people that are happy. You know, even with my father, like he brought it so, like it was so much his mission that he forgot about, he didn't forget about it, okay, but like his family suffered a lot more, even though he made a huge difference as well. But comunque, it cost him leaving his family behind. And it cost his family a price as well.
So, Georgia, we hear a lot about your warrior quality and how resilient you are. But listening to your story, it struck me that you would have had to have a lot of self-love in order to be able to turn a toxic situation around. So I would like you to reflect on the roots of your self-love. I mean, firstly, does that feel true for you, that self-love helped you turn it around? And secondly, if it is true, what were the roots of that in your view, in your understanding?
I actually don't know. I think there was actually something from the conference that came up. Now, I don't remember what the exact words, but I wrote it down today. So it's the detachment in attachment. So it's like, you know, there was like Star Wars week, people know, last week or whatever, Star Wars Day or something, no? And there was this quote that says, you always have to be prepared to separate from the things you love. You know, so you have to live being prepared. Like unfortunately, when you embark in these kind of things, you need to know that you might lose a lot, you know, because maybe it will cost you your career. Because I mean, it will cost me my career, definitely, in that company at least. It will cost me, magari, some of my friends, because I mean, people that I told you were my friends, they were still convinced that they were my friends, even though they behaved that way. I literally threw in the garbage an invitation to a wedding because I was like, I think it's funny that you don't talk to me or CC me on emails, but would like me to come to your wedding.
There's a very strong spirit of love that runs through here. And it's the kind of thing that says you're going to do what is right as you see the right, and you're going to pursue it regardless of personal cost.
Right.
But
there's still a price, which I don't know, that's where the whole, I think, consciousness and flourishing comes in. How do we make people understand, or how can we make this change? And I'm actually also interested if Natalia has a point on this, without the harm. So can we do this without the harm? And then what happens if people are not centered, magari, like I am? Because I mean, I've seen people magari are depressed now for a pandemic. No, it happens, and then the company just adds to it, you know? So what if I had thrown myself out of a window or something? You know, what if it had hurt me? That's what I think also for others. Did you want to say something, Hermela or Ella? Is that your name?
Really loved your story. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Just felt the energy, and it's really interesting how, like, I was listening up first and I was like, oh, I would have just been like burned down the place, like whatever, you know, I'm out, I don't care, like I'll find a different job, you know. whatever. But it's hard, right? It's very challenging. And in our group, one thing we discussed is authenticity in the workplace, right? How much authenticity do we bring to the workplace, especially when there's this thing called, emotional labor, how you're expected to act and take up space in the workplace. And I'm very interested, when you were going through this, can you tell us the internal experience, right? Were there times that you were like, you know what, this is not worth it, because it's challenging, right? It's really hard to bring yourself like that. There's also some piece of like vulnerability to the story that you shared with us. So I'm very interested to hear how you dealt with it internally.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Because now I'm like at the end, no? So it's hard to recall. I think we kind of remove some of the initial feelings because, it's a coping mechanism, right? So in the beginning, I remember it being very hard, right? And I had more of, as you were saying, no, let's burn the place down. I had more of a negative high school kind of attitude. Like, you don't want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to you either. Not even when my boss was like, look, I don't want to work with you. And I was like, who cares? I don't want to work with you either. No, but we both signed a contract with the company. So you need to give me something to do and I need to do it. So if you're breaching that contract, I can breach it as well, And then I called my lawyer like, yeah, can I really say that? Can I really do that? So of course, the beginning was a lot more aggressive because people were a lot more aggressive too. I had somebody, I was talking on the phone with my husband and I had somebody say, can you not laugh because it's bothering us, we're working. And that was, okay, I'm not gonna say the cuss words or whatever, but that was just kind of like, are you serious? Like, Chet, you don't even have to come and talk to me like that. And then my husband kept yelling on the phone, like, put me on speakerphone, like crazy stuff like that. He's like, what's this guy's name? Tell him I'm going to show up in my scooter in 10 minutes. Crazy moments. But then, like, really, that wasn't the point. Like, people get over it very soon because it's not like something, they know that it's wrong. They realize it just takes, Judy Neal always says, no, the beneficial presence. And that's the Mother Teresa Gandhi thing. Once you're just there, what are they going to do? It loses interest.
Richard,
Natalia
had a hand up.
Yes, Giorgia, you demonstrate a very strong support system that throughout your life, from your father and your mother and to your husband at the time, your boyfriend, all of them supporting, your mother bringing your lunch to you when you're being shunned. Those are the external sources. What about the internal sources? How do you maintain this during this shunned period?
Well, okay, first of all, appunto, reaching out, because I did need help, and second of all, it was because unfortunately I was able to handle it because I was very detached. You know what I mean? Like the losing my father, the having to handle like a whole series of things, like when I was a lot younger, made me very, very strong and tough. And I'm not somebody, again, who shares emotions and stuff. So when you talk to me, even when somebody, because, you have to sometimes go to talk to HR and there are 3 people, no? And you're sitting there by yourself and you're like sweating, no? And you're like, oh, I'm going to survive this. And I remember even calling my lawyer, like, do I really have to go to these meetings? And he was like, yes, unfortunately, you have to show up, like record them or something. And so it's like, you have to go there. And I was just really strong. But this in my experience, in my life, which is something that I'm actually working on now, was something that has always kept me very like non-emotional in not sharing my emotions, because that would always save me, because I was always ready to like, take that hit and fight back. But I think that's not a good, like today, now that I'm more centered, I don't think that's what people need to aim for.
Natalia, go ahead.
Thank you. So I did want to make a comment on just the work that you did in the workplace. I think, women have still been put in the position of having to do additional like emotional labor in the workplace, volunteer for it, not being compensated. I know Ella brought this up, but I thought that was a really great point to mention. And I think that shows, for me anyway, that you're a very like giving person, but you don't necessarily get a lot back in return. So I think when relationships, especially in the workplace, if there's a give but there's not a receive, then there's an imbalance there. And I think as well is like, right, let's go to war. Like I feel like I very much like resonate with that type of personality. Is like, I want to right all the wrongs in the world. Like I'm here to be a change maker. I don't care what anyone says. I have the energy of, you know, of a million men and more. I can handle it. But I think what's important is that, you know, maybe with your company being bought out, having all these step employees kind of come into your life, I think it's really important to reflect on the idea that maybe their emotions aren't settled. I've been taking really great like communication skills classes, and right now I'm in a mediation class. And you find that underneath all these conflicts are like core concerns that are not being met. And so perhaps, you know, of kind of coming to the conversation and having those interactions coming from a place of like, right, why are these people behaving the way that they do? Because people just don't react, like they're not mad just because it's like, oh, I want to be mad today, and that's why they're acting the way that they are. I think it kind of, if you can get to a point where you can center yourself and try and like really seek to understand the underlying cause of the issue, I think that's at least my advice, or like settling those emotions to kind of have these like really productive conversations. But I mean, I love your energy. I love everything that you've done, but I think it is hard, especially US culture in the workplace versus, you know, culture in Italy. I'm sure it's quite different as well, but those are just my 2 cents.
Well, actually, a big difference in Italy is that it wasn't so easy to fire me. So like they had to actually fight and stay through this battle, no? Because if not, they would have been like, okay, ciao, you and the dwarf can leave, no? And that would have been it. So it would have been like a useless battle, no? Okay, actually, I did that a lot in the beginning because I was like, look, I think, yeah.
I wanted to direct you to a question that Dr. Christopher Laszlo asked you that's in the chat. And he asked a beautiful question. What did you do and what are you doing to care for your own well-being? What practices do you have in your daily life? So we're trying to focus on the inner story.
Okay. Yeah, let me just, because Natalia brought up a point that's very important. You have to kind of fit in the other person's shoes. So I could see what was happening. I could understand. So I even told them, no, I was like, look, I understand you're the new boss. You need people to respect you. You need people to change. And you don't want me because I was the right hand of the old boss. And also I'm going to keep reminding you of how things were before. So that I understood. And at the same time, even the other lady who came in, you know, she came in to lead, and she found me, and I was like, Babette, you're not going to be my boss. So today I have a seniority of like, you know, 7 years. So sorry, but this is not going to happen. No. And many times what happens is when people do that, they start, once they can't get to you professionally, they start offending you personally. No. Quindi she used to say like stuff that just wasn't okay. No, but what am I going to do? You know? So I did see what they were coming from, but I still thought the way that they were doing it was wrong, because we could have found a solution a lot better instead of starting a war. They have to crush you, because if they don't crush you, then everybody's gonna come up with what's in their head, the stupid petty stuff that each person has. But that's not how companies work, or how they should work. That was my thing. About personal practices, I didn't have many at the beginning because I was always very busy. No, I was doing my PhD and I was working. So, I mean, as I mentioned, even my social life was in my company because I didn't have much time to do anything else. The only thing I would do was, they have this really cute thing that they do, which is like yoga on the sunset on this terrace, like in the center of Rome. So it's actually really beautiful. And then we all just kind of stay and get drinks and stuff. So the difference was that I wasn't doing yoga as I'm doing yoga today. So definitely the more I did yoga, especially during pandemic, the more I saw that really it kind of builds your inner light. So when people say that it only takes 10 minutes of meditation, it's true, it works, it helps, but people need to get to that point where they want to try it. And that's not always easy to do, to have people do that.
Thanks. So we have about a little over 5 minutes left. So we have maybe a couple more questions from the participants.
I have a question if there's none. If you often what is observed is when you face a crisis in life, it's an opportunity for a shift in consciousness in terms of your own consciousness. So instead of saying all these people were all wrong, so what, and that's right, but if you were to look back before this happened and now, what shifts do you think have occurred in your consciousness around love, around conflict, around the things that matter to you? I've just named them. Whatever mattered to you, be really interested in knowing what your shifts are in consciousness or awareness, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, there was definitely a shift because when I realized, that what we call now the house without idols. So when I realized that everything I was kind of aiming for really didn't make sense, it really wasn't so important for me. And that only happens again with a crisis. No, when it's kind of like you're confronted with your limits. And I was like, I don't care. Like, this is an occasion to really do something different, and I wish people could embrace it. But sometimes like you're hurt, or you feel humiliated, or you feel put aside, or, so many feelings come in. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's something that is easy for everyone. Also, because you might have a different kind of baggage or whatever that might kind of mix in, or maybe you find yourself alone, or maybe people don't want to help you, But for me, it made a huge difference because I kind of got my life back. And actually, one of my really good friends now, it was funny because he's actually, he's blind. And one day we were walking out and we were grabbing a coffee or something. And they said, you came to the bar with the blonde. No, and he was like, Judge, I would have never said that you were blonde. No, and I was like, and it was funny because I wasn't blonde, no, and so it's kind of like he, in like a split second, he put me face to face with the 12-year-old, no, who made such a shift at the time that wasn't that same person anymore, and he saw right through it, And I was just like, I kind of saw myself through his eyes, which was crazy, maybe there's like a little 13-year-old hiding somewhere now because I went through this whole battle and I have to go get her, So yeah, I don't know if we want to wrap up with the conference takeaways.
Thank you for that observation. Very cool.
I mean, does anybody else have any other, maybe one more question? Otherwise, we can move on to the wrap up.
I do.
Okay, Neil, go ahead.
Two things. One is, first, I just was so impressed with your story, your style, and then you use the language like step boss, it's like step dad, step mom. Just growing up in our culture, we heard less of that. So just this new vocabulary and the mobbing idea and how you sort of showed how Barbara interpreted a certain way, and it's just new vocabulary just coming into the world. It just shows we just need to navigate a different world. And then as you went along, this story is so compelling that then the question has been with me the last 5 minutes. I don't know if I had the chance to ask it. I don't know how it will go. But how do we get this kind of assumption or expectation that everybody in the world should love us? Is it kind of, is it good, right? I don't know, but we just also have, even if one person doesn't like us at the whole workplace, so that person sticks out in our attention. Why doesn't she or he doesn't like me? And we forget almost all the N-1 people, the large number of people. So I just developed this habit, Georgia, maybe it's helpful that focus on what's working. And even when we're organizing the conference, it's been sort of like they say, but Anil, this is not there. I just even try not to either respond or just say, okay, let it take care of itself. Let me focus on what's working. Anyway, I don't know if you had any thoughts about this feeling about whether.
Well, I do. That's the thing. Like, so, okay, I'm as even Ella was saying, or that I always try not to be a change maker, even with the economy of Francesco and everything. No, but unfortunately, sometimes when you try to get in that and it doesn't work, you just drop it. No, so I tried again. I was like, I bet, ciao, no. But then I left her behind. Okay, it's not my fault. I know it's not my fault, but still, no. I keep asking myself, could I have avoided the stress so that like I keep feeling like maybe I could have done something more. So that would be my new kind of attitude towards it, making sure that I don't leave anybody behind. Maybe I can do something more, and maybe everybody does, because when they say, I bet he doesn't like me, who cares? But if that's not a good reason not to be nice. I don't have to like you to work with you, or like, but people that you're fond of, meglio, better. But like, I don't have to like you, but I still need to be nice. I still need to see you and consider you as a person or a living being or whatever.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll have about 10 minutes, I think, Richard, if you want to do kind of a debrief with the participants. And if anybody else wanted to add, right? Richard, do you want to kind of because we just want to ask the participants for any kind of observations or your experience of this, kind of do a debrief with us. How did you feel about it? You can unmute yourself if you want to go. Just let me know who wants to go.
I'll go, and apologies for going in and out. Giorgia and everyone, the nature of your questioning were from such a heartfelt place. Every time I heard a question, it was appreciation, and it was support, and it was kind of like the wind beneath the wings. And mostly also too, I picked up in the questioner was perhaps learning him or herself as well, right? So there was a duality to the questions, that it was for Giorgia, but it was also for the question asker themselves. And what struck me also, Giorgia, in your story was the idea of, what I heard over and over again was you as an individual working to change the system and being with groups. And that message was just really loud and clear, which I very much appreciated.
Thank you. I think Chris, has a question.
Yeah, Chris Darden, let me just allow him to talk. Is an attendee right now. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay.
Chris, unmute yourself. Are you unmuted? Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, beautiful. Yeah, I just wanted to, congratulate Dr. Giorgia on her journey. It was really nice to hear her story, and I think she mentioned, something that may have been a little bit, underplayed or overlooked, but there's just being a price. And maybe all of us heard it, but I just feel like that was a really important part of it. Just her journey. It had its ups and downs, but it did come with a price. And she just spoke a little bit about how people become depressed and hurt. And I wanted to kind of comment on that, because I feel like in a toxic environment, if you are that positive light, at least at Maharishi International University, what we kind of speak about is reaching that level of invincibility. And she kind of asked, how to create a situation where people maybe don't become so depressed and hurt. I think, getting into yoga and meditation and things of that nature, it really kind of blends with this conference, because there's that level of invincibility that a person can reach that, yeah, if people start cutting you off and things, then it's almost like you're able to adjust to it, maybe in a more fluid way, and don't become so hurt and depressed. And so I just wanted to kind of speak on that, but I really enjoyed the story. and I like the results that she got from it. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Giorgia, for your.
Right. Also, companies. Okay, now actually in my company they added like a Bloom Lab. Like they're trying to do, they're inserting some practices. They're really trying. The only thing with companies that sometimes it's not like they're really going to hurt you. That's the thing. But they create that legend where you get convinced of it. You start thinking it's your fault. Something is wrong with you, you know? And even for Anil, I'm one of those people who's like, what? Everybody likes me. Like, please. But I mean, it doesn't matter. That's the thing. Because the thing is this, being nice is who you are. It's not who the other people are. So you're going to be nice anyway. It's not like I'm not going to help somebody or do something just because you're that person. You know what I mean? Like, it's because if not, it's pride. No, I do everything for myself because I'm so good and I'm so beautiful and I'm so nice and I'm so everything. Well, if you're really doing for others, then you shouldn't expect, talking about price, you shouldn't expect something back. If it comes, or it might be transitive. Somebody might do something nice to somebody else. But definitely there's a price. So I think in my story in particular, it could have not been paid. And as you said, yeah, we try to cancel it. No, but it's a sad story. You should have seen when I was like, I kind of want to say this story. And the first time I told it to them, they were like, it's a horrible story, Chen. And so, and then someone dies and then everybody gets fired, and that. So, and we might be bought back again, by the way. So that's going to be interesting as well.
Christian, did you have your hand up?
Christian is next. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to show appreciation, like a story that gets shared globally, and then we all have a chance to reflect upon it in our own world. And I just want to share some appreciation towards a few parts of your story that really resonated towards me. And the first was when your coworker departed and their desk and their belongings were still at the office. What I felt is that you really showed appreciation for that person as not a resource, but a human. And you were going through their notes and you said, that you showed how their love for their significant other was present, how their little knickknacks reflected who they were, not as necessarily as an employee, but as a person. Those actions are those authentic, loving acts of leadership and acts of community that really resonate in a loving community. And I don't want to end on a negative note, but what you said with your boss, right? And using love as a control mechanism. So you said that your boss had control in the office when there wasn't a pandemic, and now we move to pandemic environment and they're looking for a new way of control to be the boss. And to me, it felt like a window dressing or a place of control. We're putting out these messages to conform to a new environment. But I just wanted to contrast with your actions, that your actions were actually loving reminders of what it's like to be a human in a community, by something that potentially could be a love in a toxic cloak. So thank you for your story, and it's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because when I went to get her stuff, I did it because going back to my father, I remember my mother always being like, I wonder what was in his locker, because, they just kind of emptied it out. And it's something that, she was like, what if he had something there? So actually that ties back into the story. And I was just like, when I went to see through her stuff, there was just so many cute things, like the sweet note to her husband or something about her dog or something, which, just made me see her in a different way, because we only kind of had a conflict. So it's like, it just showed me the other side. And it's actually funny because, again, to close the circle, so my father was an actual doctor. So his name was Dr. Nigri, not Dr. Nigri. So it's actually funny because when I ended up not being a go-go dancer, but getting my PhD, no, I became Dr. Nigri as well, which I probably wouldn't have had that heritage if I hadn't done my PhD, for example.
I just want to mention, there's a comment by Susie in the chat, and I could just read it out. Such a beautiful story. I feel caution is in order. Sometimes a workplace or relationship is too toxic that the best solution is to leave it. That can be done with all love and respect, but there's a danger that a good-hearted person can become codependent and think it's their responsibility to fix something that they cannot fix. We need to be wise enough to know when to stay and help the situation and when not to try. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Agreed. Absolutely. Like, and that's the thing, like people, it's good. There's nothing bad in leaving. My point was just like that I felt like I could handle it and decided to try. But I also applied to other jobs. So my contract was so good, no? Nobody could top it. I'm not sure. Or maybe I would have left, I don't know. Or maybe I would have stayed.
Thank you. Okay, Natalia, I think you've got the last word here.
No pressure. Okay. So I kind of going off of what Christian was saying, I think that, right, this whole idea of business being in the end humans working towards a goal. And I think from, session 12, it was mentioned like we have to get rid of the we, or sorry, we have to get rid of the I and focus on the we. And I think that was something quite refreshing to hear about what you did do, and you volunteered yourself to put yourself in this role of just being a human. And I think at the end of the day, as businesses, if we're all about self-interest, I'm, a C-level exec, I just want to make money at the end of the day, the business isn't going to go to benefit anyone besides maybe that person for a short term. So I really think that it's so great to have these conversations surrounding businesses that need to put people first and put community first, and also put a sustainable future in their, in their plans, because I think that's just really important to ensure the success of employees to continue to have that human connection. So I really loved your story, and I love your energy, and I think you're doing just amazing things and paving the way for women in the workplace. So thank you.
No, thank you. And that's the thing though, okay, some changes can't happen bottom up, so they can't. But insomma, if you're in that office, CC that person in an email chat. And so you can do so much, because if everybody would have just CC'd me, like other people, this actually wouldn't have happened. It doesn't take so much, and you don't have to fight this battle by yourself. But in that sense, if you're going to go out of your way to come follow me in the bathroom, you know what I mean? CC me on an email chat. That's my thought, especially if you, because the thing is, it's good to leave, but what if another place is toxic as well? So what if you're always going to be confronted with something like that, higher or lower levels? So you need to figure out a way to handle it, or to fix it, or to show that there's another way. Love.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Giorgia, for sharing your story with us today. And thank you to the participants, both here in our panel, that's part of our panel, but also in the chat. We really appreciate all the questions and comments. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Barbara to do the final wrap up and to tie everything together for us.
Thank you, Angela. So, Giorgia, thank you for your story. And I wanted to say that your story is almost a story of Batwoman who has developed this weapon of love as her weapon. But I wanted to tie a few threads on the theme of love and the meaning of loving inquiry to what it means for the broader goal of the conference. The question that I want to consider is, what are the main principles that we can learn in working towards universal human flourishing? I just read Dr. Tony Nader's book, and he says love is the glue of the universe. And whether you're Batwoman with love as your weapon or Mother Teresa, it's the ability to evoke loving responses in others that I think is the glue of the universe. I know, Tom Culham, you've said that love melts the separation between us. We had, not in this panel, but in the previous one, we had a number of people talking about enlarging our box, thinking out of the box. And I think that one of the speakers in the last panel was also speaking about how we need to get into the we spaces. And love and cultivating love is one of the ways that we melt the separation between us. Love and the practice and cultivation of love is itself a core flourishing practice. I wanted to quote the words of the late Nelson Mandela to just remind us about how natural love is. I think that there's a lot of unlearning that we need to do to really access the flourishing nature of love. And this is what Nelson Mandela wrote in Long Walk to Freedom. He said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or her religion. People must learn to hate, and people must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." And I think that when I try to think about what's core to flourishing, I think practices of meditation, practices of loving inquiry, practices of embracing who we are as human beings, practices of listening with a deep and caring heart. All of these are little flourishing practices that we could embody every single day. Another thing that Dr. Nader said that I think is relevant to the overall role of the conference, he said that love can't be full under this actors that really free the self to be in the fullness of who we are as dignified human beings. I think that is where I see a link between love and who we could become as a flourishing humanity. I wanted to invite other people, Angela, Richard, Tom, trying to link what we've just done here and link the notion of a loving inquiry to the larger theme of how can we create and identify principles that help us work towards a universal human flourishing. I just had one thought, sadly, because of where I am in South Africa, it was really impossible to listen to the music. But I also wanted to make a case of accessing the deeper layers of ourself that ultimately lead to flourishing. Any other comment?
We're having a hard time hearing a lot of what you're saying, Barbara. The connection is not very good, but I would just say,
oh gosh.
Well, we heard a lot of it, so it's good. And just in response to your question, I would say practice. It sounds silly, but we are born naturally to love, but we're also taught to hate or to separate. And I just think it sounds unusual, but I think we have to practice love. And it's not romantic love. It's more in the vein of unconditional love, where you choose to love, and which is to some extent, I think Giorgia talked about it. She didn't articulate it that way, but it's a choice, and it requires a lot of fortitude. So, and ongoing practice. That would be my quick observation. Conscious practice.
Could just close out in a couple of minutes, then I would like to just take a couple of minutes to wrap it up.
Giorgia, your story demonstrates that even under the most difficult circumstances, you can be yourself, you can be strong, and others will recognize that strength and gravitate and flourish by your example. It's a beautiful story, and it so happens to be true. So there you are.
Angela, I know you've been moderator, but any thoughts?
I think just for me too, it's important to do some of your own shadow work. Like if you can actually, and I think Barbara alluded to like self-love and all that too, but if you're able to hold yourself and your darkness in love, you're going to be able to do that for other people much better. So always try to do your inner work first, so then you can actually be I think you're able to have more abundance of love for others. So that's my parting comment. So I think that's it, right? We can just, anybody else have anything else? Otherwise, we'll just turn it over to Neil.
Well, Giorgia, I think it would be good to hear a summary. What was it like for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, it was actually interesting because I'm actually the scribe in Collaborative Autoethnography, and I always type up like what happens, and I notice that there's a shift in energy. I think somebody asked in the chat, like, what are the rules to create a safe space? There are not. The thing is that it's a question of energy. Even when Ella and Chris and Julia said, we're coming here with happiness, if you're just there, there's not much you need to do, but you're there, like that energy gets created. For example, we never do this if all 5 of us aren't there. We never start a collaborative, like a sharing, if we're not all there. So there's always something about the energy that gets created, and you create it with how you share it. So I've gone on TV to actually talk. My professor had planned it to talk about toxic workplaces, to teach other people that, they weren't alone and that they could reach out for help. And he really did that for me. And that was great. But it's a different kind of sharing because people can relate to it in a different way. And I probably wouldn't have done it if like Richard and Angela and Barbara and Tom weren't there. When I was like, okay, I kind of want to share this story. And I was like, I'm just going to share it. And then I know that you guys will bring in the questions. Like I was very calm in doing it, even though it's a stressful story for me, of course. And I freaked out in the process. I don't know, I was always all calm, and I'm still Italian, Chen, in that sense. So.
Well, it went well though. It was great. Thank you for that. Okay, Neil, I think we're ready for you now.
Well, I have nothing much to say. Thank you, all of you. What a joyful thing, and I'm very proud of Natalia. Just she's wonderful, but everybody else just participated wonderfully. The backgrounds from all of you, see someone behind you like Julia and Ella and all. This is all courtesy. It's all her fault if you find something wrong in it. But I think I found 2 principles in this to connect to consciousness. That was the whole purpose of the intentional conference. We want to come out with the takeaways. Then I think this idea of love, I think it came up in last session and this one, and I think Jerry has been the glue that is connected, glue to, the love to consciousness at some level. Love is all there is, and it's connected to Beatles, and it's connected to music that way. So I think this idea of love, even from people who are like senior like transcendental movement, sometimes they say, I think it's all about love. Maharishi used to say it's all about love. So I think love sort of coming in different flavor, all kinds of love. Love essentially means connection. So I think love is by itself is a very, very, very ability to love, and beginning with loving yourself, which means like whether you say shadow work or transcendence, like Dr. Nader said, cleaning your house before you can bring the God within, all of that stuff. So the ability to have this openness to your own feeling of love, really not love, whatever it is, that it's just openness to feelings and being able to generate love. And how do you find loving environments? So I've also worked in various kind of corporations and hated them for the most part. And that's why I'm so delighted to be here, just have that sort of sense of bliss growing. So we have a lot to give. who was talking about have something to give, right? I think so. Have some bliss of love to give. That's one big principle I wanted to acknowledge. So I'll bring that out as we sort of we discover that. And the second one, I thought even this idea of storytelling, and I thought broaden the storytelling and also picture telling. It so happens both happen through the persona of Giorgia. And there's a common link that telling this kind of story, for a while, I just forgot that I'm the moderator. I just actually, not that, you guys are taking too long, but, it's you get sucked in, the emotion of it, the twists and turns. What is that? The whole hero's journey kind of thing. You start and, eventually Giorgia is going to end up a hero in that story, right? You're waiting for a happy ending. So the stories can also become way, and we saw the dialogic session, what is that, number 9? This whole idea of creating talking circles in which you can actually share and then create spaces in which you feel oneness. If you just share your thing, I think you become oneness. So like lending your ear, just as lending your heart for love, I think lending your ear can create a lot of oneness and flourishing. So I think those 2 principles I'll take away. I think painting also, but we need to learn more about how art can do. But I think art definitely, we know that intuitively art can. No, I think Kristen's monologue on when Savita asked her a question was very compelling. I just didn't fully understand exactly what she was saying very quickly. But art, and here a conversation, and then this idea of overall as a value, love. I think those are, to me, the principles. Anybody wants to comment or emphasize anything? Does it make sense? Love as a value by itself, and some of these techniques, how they can. Techniques, when infused with things like love and joy and all that stuff, can be very powerful. All right, thank you very much, and let me stop. And we appreciate your joining, and we look forward.